Got some more stats for us to chat about today from the URC regular season. Some stats that I did want to talk about are not available for all teams. The likes of turnovers won, which I think would have been a very interesting stat to see, but I've only got them for about half of the teams because the URC have changed their how they're displaying stats on their website, and they seem to be halfway through the process because half of the teams don't have any stats at all available. You can't even click on the link for those teams, the likes of Cardiff, etc. You can't even click on the link to go and look at any stats at all. So it's not even an error. They're obviously changing something, but they haven't quite completed it. But we are going to talk about the stats that are available. So starting off, we're going to look at points conceded, and this one is arranged from least to most. So Munster there, conceded the least points with 357. Next, Leinster 363, Ulster 378, Stormers 391, Glasgow 403, Connacht 426, the Bulls 448, Edinburgh 467, Cardiff 470, the Sharks 480, Scarlets 506, Ospreys 516, Benetton 533, Dragons 534, Lions 538, and then Zebre 734. So just a couple of things to note. Top three are Irish teams. Just shows how mean they are in their defence. But when we look at some other stats, we see that it's not just about making your tackles when it comes to defence. Also, Connacht are there in sixth place. So 4 of the top 6 are Irish teams. And another thing to look at as well is the fact that 1 to 7 have all qualified for the knockout stages. So all finished in the top 8. And the only team that missing from the top 8 are the Sharks down in 10th. So that kind of indicates to us that points conceded is a big indicator of where teams actually finish on the log, and actually more of an indicator than points scored. If you remember back to that video as well, it wasn't as clear cut. So just shows kind of, solid defense really is the starting point for a team that wants to do well in pretty much any competition. Also, just note there as well, like Zebre didn't win all season, and they came close on a couple of occasions, but almost 200 points more than the team that are closest to the Lions. Just shows you like that, for them, their biggest work, and I think for them to actually get a win next year is the defense. If you're conceding for them probably 30 odd points per game, having to score 30 odd 40 points just to have a chance to win the game really is a big ask every game, especially when you think other teams are able to get win kind of low scoring encounters, or for them not really something that they can do. That they know they're going to be conceding a lot of points every game, and it just makes it so hard for them. And I'm just going to do a quick calculation here. So they are conceding. Let me just correct that. So they are conceding per game 40.77 points per game. So if you're conceding an average of 40 points a game, how are you expected to, to even come close to winning? So they've done well to come close to winning, conceding that amount on average. But yeah, real work on for them for next year. We also see then the Lions and the Dragons down there in Benetton too. Like Benetton, we're fairly close to making the playoffs, but defense obviously something that let them down. Next time we're going to look at tries conceded. Again, we have Munster number 1. They only conceded 47. Stormers next at 48. Ulster 49. Leinster 50. The Bulls 52. The Warriors 53. Connacht 58. The Sharks 61. Then Edinburgh 62. Cardiff 64. Scarlets 65. Dragons 70, Ospreys also 70, Benetton 74, the Lions 75, and Zebre, again, the outliers with 100 and, is that 6 or 5? 106, I think. So yeah, it's some, crazy numbers for the likes of Zebre, like 105, sorry, they conceded. So yeah, so again with Zebre, just really, really hard if the gap is that big between you and the other teams. They really do have to work on that defense for next year. If they can produce even just a few solid defensive performances, they might actually get that win that they've been looking for. But then again, looking at this time, look at the top 8 in tries conceded. It's basically not in the right order, but the top 8 of the URC. And again, it just shows that, defense really is the kind of the foundation of your team doing well. If you can sort that out, then attacks is going to come with that as well. But there's no point in being really hot on attack, but then conceding more points than you're scoring. So very, very interesting there. I think, because we saw an attack where you would have teams who it was kind of more mixed, right? Where we'd have teams who had not made the playoffs actually, featuring highly in the top 8, but not here, at least on these ones. When we go into more of the defensive stats, we will, like tackles made. So here, we got Ulster at the top with 3,001 tackles. So, the only team to break the 3,000 barrier, only just broke it as well. Benetton next, 2,910. Connacht 2,878. Cardiff 2,856. Leinster 2,836. Scarlets 2,750. Dragons 2,706. Munster 2,661. Stormers 2,599. Zebre 2,486. Ospreys 2,435. Edinburgh 2,416. The Lions 2,341. Warriors 2,278. The Sharks 2,153. And the Bulls 2,083. So here we're seeing, a much bigger mix. Like you've got the likes of Benetton at the top there, making the second most number of tackles. Cardiff there as well, and Scarlets, teams that didn't do all that well over the season. But then you have mix in with them, Ulster, Connacht, and Leinster. And again, I think tackles made is one of those stats where, it's kind of hard to draw inferences from it in terms of whether a team is doing well because they make a lot of tackles or doing badly. It basically comes down to individual style. If you're a team that, in defense, your defense is kind of built on patience rather than on being aggressive and trying to win turnovers, then making a lot of tackles is, not a bad thing for you. But if you are one that, you're trying to hold on to the ball and you're trying to win it back as quickly as possible, then you want to be lower in that number. But if we look at the bottom 3, we got kind of an example of that as well. We got the Warriors, the Sharks, and the Bulls, all teams that like to hold on to the ball, and therefore generally the opposition will make more tackles than them because they are the ones in possession for more of the game. Next, then we have tackle success. So this is a good indicator in terms of first line of defense. But the Warriors, the top tackler was 90.21. Connacht just a smidgen behind him at 90.2. Leinster 89.88. Ospreys 89.69. Edinburgh 89.4. Ulster 89.04. Benetton 88.83. Stormers 88.07. Cardiff 87.85. Dragons 87.62. Scarlets 87.6. Munster also 87.6. Then we got the Bulls at 87.09. Sharks 86.99. Zebre 86.81. And the Lions the worst tackle success at 86.37. So again, it's a kind of a mix between, we have the teams who generally like to hold on to the ball, kind of at the top, the likes of Glasgow, Connacht, Leinster, also the Ospreys we've seen as well previously, that they're a team that like to hold on to the ball. And then, we have teams who have done pretty well in the competition, the likes of Munster, Bulls, and to a lesser extent the Sharks as well, but all who've qualified for the knockout stages, being down at the bottom. And what it comes to for that is how well the scramble is, because if you got a good scramble, then you missing that first up tackle is not as important. And I think that's where the difference comes. And I'd love if they had stats on kind of scramble defense, in terms of, well, when a tackle is missed, what is the actual outcome of that? Like, is it a try conceded, or does somebody cover, or what happens there? It would be nice to see those stats. Maybe in the future we can get those, or if I could get more overall stats, just raw stats, I could probably work something out myself. But at the moment, there's just not enough information available, at least from the sources that I use. Next 10 tackles missed, we got Warriors at the top with 223, Ospreys 251, Edinburgh 256, Bulls 269, Sharks 280, Connacht 282, Leinster 287, Stormers 310, the Lions 319, Benetton 325, Zebre 328, Ulster 329, Munster 330, Dragons 335, Scarlets 341, and Cardiff 347. So Warriors, not missing that many tackles overall. And we saw that they had the best tackle success as well. And then, a lot of the ones at the top there are actually at the top of the tackle success, but not the Bulls. The Bulls were down in 13th place for tackle success, but they haven't missed that many tackles, comparatively. But if we look then again at the number of tackles that they made as well, we know that they were, at the bottom of that stat too. So that's kind of why they are where they are in terms of tackle success. Not missing that many tackles, but not having to make that many tackles anyway. Then you kind of got Zebre kind of in the middle there, which isn't too bad. But we know their tackle success is only better than the Lions. And if I was the Lions defensive coach, that would kind of worry me a little bit, that you're down below Zebre. But again, defensive systems, we're actually seeing defensive systems beginning to shift away from the whole idea of it's all about the first up tackle. Now it's beginning to get to the point where the scrambling behind and kind of almost like soaking the player and getting them in behind your line where you could potentially turn them over is beginning. It's the way that things are going. We see certain teams doing that, the likes of like on the international stage, we see it from Ireland, but we also see it from some of the Irish provinces as well. Next time we have turnovers conceded. Again, I would love to have turnovers won, because I think comparing those two stats to each other is very interesting. But URC don't have the stats for each of the teams, but Cardiff conceded the least turnovers with 202, Ulster next 207, Ospreys 209, Connacht 215, Edinburgh also 215, Glasgow 216, Leinster 219, Munster 220, Lions 221, Benetton 223, Scarlets 224, Dragons 231, Bulls 234, Sharks 238, Stormers also 238, and Zebre with 270. So Zebre, no real surprise that they're at the bottom there with the most turnovers conceded. Most teams will go through a period where Zebre have a purple patch of kind of holding them out and turning them over a lot, I feel. And then just look at the South African teams down there as well. You got the Bulls, the Sharks, and the Stormers. And I think with them, a lot of it is that the like the breakdown. Generally, in their games, you're going to see teams competing at the breakdown, but on both sides of the ball, not just the teams playing those teams. And that's why I'd love to have the turnovers won as well, because my gut feeling is that for the South African sides, their turnovers won are going to be fairly high compared to like if you did a ratio between their turnovers won and conceded. It's actually not going to look that bad for them in an overall capacity. But like you can see, the likes of Cardiff, Ulster, Ospreys, and Connacht, especially there, and Edinburgh, like teams that like to hold on to the ball and are patient and are kind of somewhat risk averse as well in terms of not giving the risky pass and stuff like that, and therefore being able to keep their turnovers conceded down. Next, then we're going to look at the defense overall. So you can just see each of the stats there, and as usual, it is broken down first of all by shield, and then each of the teams then are in alphabetical order within their shield. So you can kind of quickly look at each of the stats. Not going to talk about it that much. It's just for your information if you want to pause and kind of look at the numbers yourself. Next, then we have the defense ranking. So basically, all this does is take each of the categories that we talked about and take the ranking that the team had in each of those, then average them out, and then the average positions are then ranked against each other. So Ulster have the lowest average ranked position, and you can see like that. Points conceded in third, tries conceded third, tackles made number one, tackle success sixth. Then that should be tackles missed, right? I just need to what you're seeing is all right, but on what I'm seeing, I'm just correcting it now, because otherwise, when you see it on the video, you'll be like, what is he talking about there? That's tackles missed. There we go. And then turnovers lost as well. They're ranked number 2. So overall, pretty decent from them. Then we'll just quickly go through the other rankings. So we have Leinster second, Connacht third, Glasgow fourth, Edinburgh fifth, Munster sixth, Ospreys seventh, Stormers are eighth, Cardiff ninth, Benetton 10th, Bulls 11th, Scarlets 12th, Sharks 13th, Dragons 14th, the Lions 15th, and Zebre Parma in 16th. So again, we're seeing a lot of the teams who have made the knockout stages in that top 8. We do have also the likes of Edinburgh and Ospreys up there, but if you watch the other stats videos, you see that they have issues in other areas as well. And then we see that the Bulls are kind of outside and the Sharks are outside. But when we looked at the attacking stats, we saw that, especially the Bulls did really well on attack, which kind of made up for maybe, their defense not being as good across the board. But certainly in certain areas, the Bulls, not too shabby on defense either. Next, then we are going to have a quick look at some of the charts that we have. So first one is points conceded. So you can see, first of all, you got each of the shields and then each of the teams within those shields. You can kind of compare and contrast. Obviously, Zebre sticking out there within their shield and across the board as well. We can see, like for the most part, within the shields, there isn't that much difference between most of the teams within those shields. And then, but when we look at it kind of overall, we can see that the Scottish/Italians conceded the most points. Obviously, that's skewed by Zebre for them. Next then are the Welsh, then the South Africans, and then the Irish conceding the fewest points, which would point towards the Irish generally defensive system being that little bit meaner. I'm not going to say better, a little bit meaner than the other teams. And as we go through, I think that is a trend that kind of continues. Next, then we have the tries conceded. So again, same format. If we look at it in terms of the Shields, so Scottish Italians conceded the most tries. Next are the Welsh, then the South Africans, and again the Irish performing the best of the Shields. Next, we look at tackles made. So again, you can see it within the Shields and within the teams, and overall Shield versus Shield. We see the Irish have made the most tackles. The next are the Welsh, then the Scottish/Italians, and the South Africans making the least amount of tackles. But again, you can see in terms of the teams that have made the knockout stages that there's more than one way to skin a cat. You got the Irish making a lot of tackles, and 4 of their teams made the knockout stages. South Africans making the least amount of tackles, but still 3 of their teams making the knockout stages. So, not necessarily one way or the other being best, but you would kind of notice as well that like the Stormers, who were the best performing of the South African teams overall, they're like, if you look at their bar, it wouldn't look at a place in that Irish group either. They're kind of on par with Munster there, really. Next then, tackle success. So I think this is quite a good graphic here in terms of just the individuals. You can kind of see like that, Munster really stick out in Ireland, as do obviously Zebre in their Shield, and the Emirates Lions in the South African Shield. But then, like the Ospreys stick out on the Welsh one because their tackle success is so much better than the others. And then we look across the Shields, then Irish with the best, average over 89%. Then it dropped down a little bit to the Scottish, then the Welsh, and then the South Africans then were down around 87%, which isn't it's not a terrible percentage overall. It's just a lot of the time with stuff like this, it's fine margins. It's not like one team just completely missing all their tackles. It's just a case of again, just that little bit of success can just that little bit extra can just make a big difference when you have a little bit extra in a lot of different areas. Next is then we have tackles missed. So again, you have the shields of each of the teams in there. You can see that like Warriors really do stick out, not just in terms of their own shield, but across the board as well. That was a great performance from them. And then when we look in terms of the shields, then we see that the Welsh tend to miss the most tackles. Next, the Irish, then the South Africans, and the Scottish/Italians. So when we're looking at the matchups for the weekend, Glasgow versus Munster comes to mind. You got Munster, who generally are a very mean defence against Glasgow team who don't miss all that many tackles. But the last time that the two teams played, it was very high scoring. Glasgow got a massive lead, and then Munster came back. So it's going to be interesting to see whether it kind of goes more kind of a tighter game, which looking at the stats would tell you that it's possible for those two to have a fairly tight game between them. You got one team that have missed the fewest tackles, and then you have Munster, who have actually had a very decent defence overall, like not conceding that many points or that many tries. Next time we have the turnovers lost. So again, you can kind of see, for the most part, within the Shields, it's fairly even across the board. Obviously, Zebrates stick out, but they kind of stick out in almost every stat. And then when we look between the different Shields, we've got South Africa conceding or losing the ball most in terms of turnovers. Then we have the Scottish Italians, the Welsh, and then the Irish are with the fewest. So again, going into the weekend, looking at the in terms of the Irish, when they're playing outside of their shield, obviously you have Ulster playing Connacht, but for Munster and for Leinster, not conceding that many turnovers, I think is going to be key for the way both of those teams play as well. And if they can keep that trend up, I think certainly, I think everybody is expecting Leinster to go through. But hey, everybody expected them to make the final last year and it didn't happen. So, don't take anything for granted. And then Munster, I think whatever stats you look at, all the stats and just gut feeling as well points to that being a fairly tight game between those two. And I think, that's pretty much it for this one. We have one lot of stats left to go, which is discipline. So I'll work on that and I'll get that one up for you as well. I'm not sure when it's going to come out. It's one of the case of one of these. It'll be ready when it's ready, right? But I will also have previews for each of the URC quarterfinals coming up at the weekend, so keep an eye out for them. Obviously, we have Ulster versus Connacht tomorrow night, so that one preview for that should be either out tonight or tomorrow morning, and then the others will probably be out at some stage tomorrow as well. But I just want to say thank you for watching, and thank you for all of the support that the channel has gotten since I begun at the start of this URC season. It's really been heartening to see so many people posting comments and sharing their opinions. And it's what I love about rugby is that it doesn't matter what team you follow or what opinions you have. Generally, if you're not an asshole, you can share them, and someone can disagree with you or agree with you. And you can just kind of enjoy that back and forth, and it really is one of the great things that I love about rugby.